go.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, or in this case on screen, gentlemen, good morning. We are back with another Woods Hole Film Festival Filmmaker Chat. This is a wonderful way that the Woods Hole people have put together to allow us to make the leap during this weird, dark year from a live in-person film festival with events where we would be all on stage together to the virtual version, thanks to Zoom and a lot of behind the scenes work by Judy, John, Hannah, and the rest. We are able to have even a broader audience and a broader reach, I think, for your films and your remarks and visions about your work and how it's come about and what it means and the whole range of things we can talk about. Woods Hole Film Festival is now up and running as of Saturday morning. It runs through August 1st, and it is what I would call an embarrassment of riches, a huge range of fascinating and provocative films, both features and shorts. I've been asked by the festival to help out with some of these discussions, mainly with the shorts, and it is quite a smorgasbord of beautiful, jewel-like little bits of the human experience all over the map, from tragedy to comedy to mystery and suspense and horror and everything in between. So I'm Steve Young. I am not a filmmaker myself, although I have been the subject of a documentary called Bathtubs Over Broadway, which is how Woods Hole heard of me, and they very kindly had me back to help out with some events and discussions along the way. I'm a comedy writer by trade. I worked for David Letterman for a long time. I've also written for The Simpsons. And I have gotten a front row seat in the past few years to see what filmmakers do, the challenges they face, the amazing amount of work and vision it takes to get your film done and out into the world. So I always want to say congratulations to each of you for bringing something out of the foggy mists of possibility to the finished stage where it's crossing the finish line and out in the world and getting the reaction from the public, whether in this case online or hopefully once again before long a real world film festival. But Woods Hole has done a great job making the leap over to virtual. So enough talking from me. Except I do want to say that each time I do one of these, Woods Hole groups the filmmakers and the films into a subcategory, which is useful for getting some conversation going. This time, the category that your films were put into, and I don't think you've been told this in advance, it's simply question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. So a bit of miscellaneous feeling to it, but I think more than that, what they're getting at is just a sort of feeling of what the hell is going on in life? And you've all sort of come at that mysterious, bewildered feeling about life, mainly through comedy, but still, you've all in different ways approached the sort of bewildering aspect of the human existence, and we'll talk a little bit about maybe where you fit into that. But I've certainly talked nonstop for several minutes, and I want to throw it out to each of you gentlemen to go around, introduce yourself and what your film is, and just a little bit about the origins of the film, how you came to be inspired and got it going. So I know we have Eat the Rainbow here. Brian, welcome again, and explain to our viewers who you are and also where you are. That's interesting right now, too.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for programming my film. I'm super excited to be here virtually. I'm in San Francisco, and Eat the Rainbow is the 10th film in a series of films. I have an alter ego, a drag character, and the origins of the films were part of a live show, and they've since been. The last two films really were the only two that were just made as films. And the last one, Eat the Rainbow, was it's a musical. It's kind of a departure from the others. The others were intended to be sort of shocking and, you know, competing with, you know, drunk, sort of loud, folks in a queer bar. And the last one is a sort of more earnest, political, musical, ridiculous love story.
So it comes out of a larger thread of what you've been working on with some of the same characters, or
My character for sure, the mother character for sure. I think in this film, those are the only two characters that have appeared in other films. And oftentimes I'll have people who have been in films but play different characters. This one, it's all new except for my character and my mother's character.
all right. Well, thank you for making it. I will recommend all these films without reservation, but Eat the Rainbow, I thought was a dazzling display of audacity and color and verve and original music. That's always exciting to me when somebody figures out a way to up the ante with an original musical number or two. So zany might not be a wrong word here, but there's more to it than that. It has a serious message under it, and we're going to try to avoid spoilers today because you really owe it to yourselves to go into the system and see all these things. But we'll dig into maybe a little bit of the balance between comedy and seriousness in a few minutes. But also, Brian, thank you for getting up early in San Francisco. I'm always curious as we do these. People can be pretty far flung. There's always somebody from the West Coast, and there's often somebody from Europe, so maybe not needing to get up so early. But we have Thomas Freundlich from a film called Cold Storage. Hello and welcome, Thomas. And why don't you explain a little bit about what your film is and how it came to be? And you're the director, writer.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah. So basically the director, co-writer, and cinematographer on the film. So quite a few hats. Yeah, and greetings from Finland. So it's about 5 p.m. here. So good timing for us. Warm and sunny, southern Finland. So Cold Storage is I would say it's an 9-minute narrative short. I usually tend to categorize it as a dance film because it kind of grew out of that sort of subgenre. But it's kind of a film that we feel that you can watch it without having to think you're watching a dance film. So we're kind of happy that it's been able to sort of cross over and sneak into a lot of different festivals. It's a story about a sort of this lonely fisherman fishing out on the ice in this sort of strange, desolate Arctic landscape, and he actually finds this sort of prehistoric Iceman frozen in the ice, and stuff starts happening from there. So, but I think one of the basic references for us in this film was sort of to give a little bit of a tip of the hat to the sort of classic silent screen, talking about Buster Keaton, Chaplin, and these guys who would sort of really do their stuff for the camera without having to create it in the edit. And also, there is a dance sequence in the film. That much I can spoil. And for that, we were kind of sort of looking to the classic Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly style of actually filming a dance sequence, even though it doesn't look anything like a Gene Kelly musical. But so the underlying idea is the same. So this is basically what we were trying to do a little bit, and maybe operate a little bit on this borderline that you mentioned already of like between comedy and something that's actually a little bit tragic. So playing with that little border there. I guess those would be some of the key elements.
Okay. I'm very curious, having not yet been to Finland, although I would love to visit that part of the world. as you see the film get going, is that an accurate representation of a certain kind of life there with this unbelievably desolate world of ice and isolated fishermen?
Well, it's a stylized portrayal, but there's something of the truth in it, I think. So it does. I mean, a lot of people have told us that the film does have this sort of weird, slightly quirky Nordic character to it, which could be true. I mean, we didn't specifically set out to make a film um, that would have that angle, but it's probably there whether we want it or not. So in some sense, I think it does have something of the Finnish landscape and maybe the Finnish psyche as well in it, for better or for worse.
Well, I find that to be interesting sort of sub area for me to contemplate. I'm part Norwegian. I've never been over to that part of the world. I wonder if I went over there, if I would detect that sort of subtle but unique flavor. And you might say, oh my God, the Norwegians, don't conflate us with the Norwegians, with the Finns. So I don't want to oversimplify anything there. But yes, it did have a sense of there's a world that I've never seen before, and now I'm getting a glimpse of it. And yes, within this realm of comedy and maybe a little tragedy, you don't know exactly how stylized it is, but all of you created a time and place that really grips you right away. So we'll get back into maybe what you're thematically trying to get at there. But congratulations, it really took off. If you're just watching it and no one has told you there's a dance sequence coming, it really is a kind of left turn from the very somber beginning, and really quite full of a weird joy. So I enjoyed that very much.
Thanks.
And then we have Duel, and I believe we have two folks from that. I'm pleased to say that I know Mark Kiefer a little bit. We met last summer when we could actually go to the physical Woods Hole, and we didn't know what luck we had at the time, but it was a lovely festival last year. Mark, and then we have Liam McNeil. And gentlemen, why don't you introduce yourselves? And always fun to hear where you are physically right now, but what are your titles and roles in this movie, and how did that one get going?
Okay, thanks, Steve. And yes, great to see you again. It was indeed a fantastic experience last year. Again, I'm Mark Kiefer. I wrote, directed, and produced this film, Duel, which stars my good friend Liam, whom you'll hear from in a minute. I am coming to you from Boston, where I live. And just a quick bit about sort of to your question about sort of the origin of the film. I'm a student of history. I've been involved in historic preservation efforts here in Boston for a long time, and particularly fascinated with early American history. As I sort of researched this subject, partly inspired by, of course, the great success of the musical Hamilton, which famously centers around a famous duel. I came to realize I'm particularly fascinated with those aspects of history which make you say, did that really happen? Did people really do that kind of thing? And dueling is, I think, squarely in that category, where it's almost hard to believe people actually did that. And particularly in Hamilton's case, where, of course, he tragically died in the very same spot in a duel where his son had earlier died in a duel. And you can't make this stuff up. But as I researched it, I realized how incredibly complicated the whole thing was. There's a code of dueling, which I think originated in Spain, that's just pages long. And I thought, how would these people ever remember this stuff, particularly in such a tense moment? And so I thought, let's just pull that thread and have them basically, not really know what they're doing in this otherwise sort of complicated scenario. And so I think sort of that's a bit of where it came from. We shot it in Concord, which is perhaps appropriate, birthplace of the American Revolution, and not far from where Liam is from. Liam.
And birthplace of, yes, Liam McNeil. How's it going, everybody? I'm an actor on Duel, And Mark and I met probably 5, 6, no, more than that, actually, 10 years ago about. And then we've been making films for about 5 or 6 years, or maybe 7. Mark knows better. I think you have it tattooed on your arm or something. But Mark's fantastic because he's a one-man show. He writes, he directs, he shoots, he edits, he does sound, and very quickly too. So a lot of times whenever I'm in town, and I'm in the Boston area right now, and some of the other actors that we work with, he'll say, "Hey, are you available XYZ day?" So in one day, we'll shoot this 5, 6, 7 page, 5, 6, 7 minute comedic short, and then about 4 or 5 days later, we'll get the finished film. Usually, sometimes a couple weeks, but as an actor, it's amazing to be able to know, hey, when I'm in town, we can meet up with Mark. We can get this great little short done, and have it be out. Because that's always such a challenge, of course, too, as everybody knows when you're making films, is the back end of it. Okay, you've got this great story, you've got everything shot, and now you've got to put it together. And if financing is an issue, there's all this kind of stuff that can drag on. So Mark's great for being a one-stop shop for all that. So we've had a lot of fun over the years shooting these 5, 6, 7, 10-minute shorts, and this was one that was particularly fun because it was in Concord on location, historic period costumes, and it's always just a blast being with the group. So it's almost like a repertory at this point.
Well,
so
that's illustrative of a few things that I've seen from learning about the filmmaker world, and I've seen again and again the value that people place on finding their core team that they just want to keep working with again and again, because so few people really mesh with you at that level where you're just confident all the time. So if you find them, you grab them, you keep working with them. It is a delight to think of somebody being the one-man band and getting a film shot in one day and turning it around that quickly. That's a great way to work if you can. Even some of the shorts I've seen in other packages here, the other end of the spectrum, where the credits list rolls on at the end for like 5 minutes, and you think, wow, this is just an enormous undertaking and probably took a long time, and just so many people bringing their talents. I wouldn't say that either is preferable. It just depends on your vision and what you want to try to accomplish. The documentary I was in took 4 years to make. So anytime I hear about somebody making a film in a couple of days, I just think, wow, well, pick your area and whatever you feel at home with, maybe you'll dwell there. But all power to somebody who can make it happen that fast and decisively. But yes, a very entertaining glimpse of I think it was 1770, we're told, at the top of the film, and you get to play with some costumes, and and this kind of starts going into what we'll talk about the theme here and where you sort of all come up to the edges of it. Dueling is a matter of life and death. Being out on the ice in a harsh environment is a matter of life and death, even before you find somebody frozen into the ice. And that's another form of life and death. Brian, nobody is overtly threatened with death in your movie, but you're all around the area of intolerance and implied threats of expulsion or perhaps even violence. So you're working on very serious ground also, but all of you are taking these deeply dramatic and important themes and overlaying comedy on top of it. Mark, yours I think is overtly comedic. It's I guess you just call it a comedy short. It has the life and death in there, and there is and I'm not going to do the spoiler thing and tell us where we land on that spectrum of life and death, but it's underneath the lightheartedness. There's something to think about in terms of what happens in the human adventure. Thomas, you've got a somber world and a difficult world, and it's comedic and suddenly joyful. But all of you, I guess I want to ask, where do you think comedy fits into your own storytelling universe, is it always a part of the work you do, or is it just one of various genres that you might turn to depending on what the particular project is? Brian, let's go with you. I'm curious to think, you said that Eat the Rainbow has been part of a series. Has your other work in this series had the same comedy feeling, or is this a departure for you?
No, they're all comedies. The others are a little more. They push the envelope a little more. This one is, this one I think still has its ridiculousness and is set in a kind of outrageous world. But the others are a lot messier in terms of pushing the envelope and being over the top. But they're all comedies. They're all comedies. This one is I guess a sweeter comedy perhaps than the others. The others might be, let's say, a grosser comedy.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had a wonderful line in there, if I can remember it. It was, if not this exactly, it was very close to this. Life can be so ugly, yes, but it can also be so beautiful. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the yin and yang and dark and light, or comedy and tragedy, or whatever. But do you feel like you really only have work to do that involves comedy? Would you ever do something that is truly unrelievedly dramatic and dark?
I mean, I would, and I think about that, and if I start writing something, it always sort of turns to comedy. So, but I do have this idea of doing something a little more serious. I think there probably would always be elements of comedy in it, but maybe it wouldn't be a comedy itself. But yeah, so far it's pretty much been all comedies, at least stuff I've directed. I mean, my day job is producing movies, and some of the stuff I've produced have been serious, but the directing stuff has all been comedy.
All right. Well, I, as a comedy writer, feel like I would be hard pressed to completely ever leave that behind in anything that was actually coming out of me and was meaningful. So, but it's not all just, it's not an on-off switch. There's a spectrum to it. And it sounds like you, with each iteration you do, are maybe different places on the spectrum between comedy and drama. And Thomas, where would you say comedy falls on your spectrum of what is your core vision? Is it something that's always going to be there, or is it, well, maybe this time it'll be purely serious?
I think this film is actually a little bit of an outlier in my normal work. Most of it tends to be sort of more in a documentary vein, or maybe sort of more sort of experimental, abstract. So this is actually quite different from a lot of the other short films that I've done. But I don't know. I think we didn't actually specifically like set out to make a comedy film as such. It sort of just somehow took form when we were writing the film, and just basically trying to tell a story and make it like engaging and entertaining. So I think we didn't like specifically stamp it as a comedy film to start with, but somehow, I don't know. I'm reminded of this quote. I think it's been attributed to Chaplin. Could be wrong, but there's something about like everything that's funny always has something sad in it, and to me that's sort of a truth that's really universal and goes so deep. When you start to look at stuff that is funny, there's always something that's actually not funny at the bottom of it, and to play with that line, I think, as a storyteller is a really nice place to explore.
Yeah, well, it was fun, and then the fun is over toward the end of your movie, and there's that feeling of loss, although then there's a new sort of ambiguous moment at the very end, like, oh, maybe some other kind of crazy fun could be coming. And
Question
again,
marks. Yeah.
it's hard to avoid talking to you about the cool stuff in the movies, because we want people to go into it having the discovery that I had. So again, everybody try to go check these things out, because they are delightful and well worth your time. But yes, interesting that comedy is maybe not your home base usually. So what kind of documentaries are you working on ordinarily?
Well, my own background is as a dancer and choreographer originally, so So sort of this dance filmmaking, basically shooting dance is sort of been my home base over the years, and sort of the other filmmaking stuff has kind of expanded out of that gradually. So I think most of the work that I do is somehow connected with the performing arts, like dance documentaries or shorts that incorporate movement in them. So that's sort of the area from which most of the other stuff has sort of branched out over the years.
Well, that was a wonderful left turn in the course of Cold Storage to see this really quite amazing tour de force happen in a genre that you weren't necessarily expecting in this strange, bleak Scandinavian adventure. So, yeah, I can see that this is not the first time you've been around some dancers and dance projects. So, very cool. Mark and Liam, you've mentioned to me that you generally do comedy shorts. Are you just firmly in that quadrant, or do you think, well, sometimes we have a bit of a darker message and it's not really so funny, you may have some touches of comedy, or are you just kind of, you found your territory and you reliably kind of stay there?
Well, I'll go first. To me, I think, yes, the stuff that Liam and I have done together has all been comedy. To me, I like to describe comedy as sort of the safe place or space between the things we can't talk about and the things that we must talk about. So even in the case of Duel, well, it's deliberately quite silly. You know, the 1770s were a very polarizing, very divisive time in America, just as the time we're living in now. And, you know, I'm also kind of fascinated by the fact that at that time, there was much more emphasis on etiquette. And in particular, so dueling is an example of the etiquette for the resolution of conflict. And I think that is something that's missing in our society today. And indeed, not giving too much away, but it is the etiquette in the end that unites these two characters that are completely at odds, even violently in the beginning. And so there is, I suppose, a bit of a more serious side even to this rather silly film. I do love drama. I've written a couple of serious dramatic features. They haven't been produced, of course, but the bulk of my work these days is comedy for sure.
I'm not sure if
Oh yes, Liam, please.
sorry, I'm not sure if I caught that. Are you endorsing bringing back dueling to the current age we're in, or was that?
It's so genteel, and there are clear-cut rules of etiquette. Yes,
yeah, it's perfect.
We can just get more pistols into people's hands. I think we'll be much better society.
Yeah. And to your question, Steve, yeah, I mean, as an actor, you always have the different itches to scratch, so to speak. So I think for me, always a balance is nice. I mean, once you do a couple comedy shorts, you want to do something more dramatic. Once you do something dramatic, you feel like you want to do something light, fun. And to echo Thomas's quote, I think Laurence Olivier said, you know, he always looks for the comedy in the drama, and he looks for the drama in the comedy. And it's hard to divorce the two things. I think each help deepen each other. Comedy without dramatic stakes isn't as meaningful, and drama without comedy isn't as human. So a lot of times there's, like you say, there's a spectrum. So it's hard to sort of keep both of those things apart. They inevitably want to draw towards each other.
Yeah, it's so many ways for things to go wrong, and I congratulate you for avoiding the minefields in which an intended dramatic moment gets laughs that it didn't want, or comedy gets dead silence. I mean, we've all seen things like that happen, and you can say, well, everything is so subjective. You can't condemn an audience for reacting the way they do, but you know the feeling of, all right, I wanted to make something funny, and yes, the audience is laughing at the right point. So you know when you've succeeded on that. But I've had over the decades many points of white knuckle tension of, okay, this thing I think was funny, let's see how it actually plays. And you win some, you lose some. But a friend of mine who's also a comedy writer once said, comedy writers are the most serious people. And that, I think, is a sort of sobering thought, like, ooh, really? Do I have to be the most serious people? But comedy writers do look into an abyss of the worst of human experience and try to figure out some way to process it that makes it, if not palatable, at least something we can all recognize and be glad we've seen, and have some sort of renewed resolve to keep going, maybe. So, I mean, I don't want to put too much on the shoulders of comedy writers, but they do something that straight drama cannot do all by itself. But I want to go back to Brian. You have this amazingly colorful and eclectic thing. The imagination of like how some of the dialogue was presented, I thought was, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. Just the palette of colors and physical forms you were working with was terrific. I'm seeing that we did get a question. I think somebody watching on Facebook wanted to ask about the inclusion of Dolores Huerta in the film, and what can you tell us about Dolores and how that happened?
Well, for those that don't know, Dolores is a civil rights leader. She just turned 90 years old. She's still working. She worked with Cesar Chavez to create the United Farm Workers Union, and she's pretty celebrated. She's won, that she got the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Obama. I produced a documentary called Dolores about her, feature documentary, and we became super good friends. And she appreciates my ridiculous sense of humor, and I asked her if she would be in this and throw her civil rights career away. And she, she did. I asked her if she would do it in drag, and so she's at a pivotal moment in the film. She plays a wise person in the film, and she said, she's like, I'll play a man in your film if you want, but I just have one question for you. She's like, I trust your writing. I will do whatever you say. She said, I think artists are prophets, but I have one question, and that is, does the wisdom from the movie come from a man? And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. So I said, I'm going to make you non-binary, and make her, I gave her a line that when we assumed she was male, that all wisdom does not come from men. So I gave her an opportunity to say something. But yeah, Dolores was amazing. I cannot believe she agreed to be in the film. And I thought she did a great job. This is her first narrative role. She's been in a ton of movies, of documentaries and projects where she plays herself. But yeah, it was amazing to have her in the project.
Well, that is a crazily wonderful story, and I love when you get to hear about the web of connections people have that allows to make worlds collide at such a large conceptual level. Yes, that is terrific to hear, and I'm sure all of you from your different work must know other people that you've brought in surprising roles. Thomas, would any of your documentary work have made you think, oh, who'd be great for this cold storage movie is somebody who's never been in a comedy project before? Was there any weird overlap like that for you?
Sometimes you do get these weird ideas like, so-and-so could be really risky but interesting.
Yeah.
For this film, it was basically sort of a lot of my sort of dream team people, like Valtteri Raikkalio, who's the main performer and choreographer. He's actually my best friend, so we work together on all kinds of stuff. And we've done a zillion projects over the years, so we like have this super tight process of doing stuff together. And then the other guy is the Iceman. He's also one of our good friends from the dance scene. So we kind of just brought in all our like our gang, all the people that we love to work with. So it turned out okay. So in a way, for this film, we kind of played it safe in a way. Just brought in all the people that we'd want to have on our dream team, and we were able to work with them. So that was really lots of fun.
even within that, though, I'm sure like your high level dancers must say, I did not really imagine a world in which I would be putting on a prehistoric Iceman costume and cavorting on the vast Arctic ice or something like that.
True. It's
You get to weird
yeah,
places.
yeah, not something that you would probably do every day as a working contemporary dancer. So yeah, but it went quite well. So really happy with
Cool.
the process.
And Mark and Liam, I know you're part of one of these coveted teams where, okay, we found our people, we know how to operate. We are a little Delta force that swoops in and makes our movies, and we know how to do that. But Mark, you're talking about being a fan and history buff of this sort of American colonial and revolutionary world. Do you find historians or other experts that you say, this would be somebody to bring over the line into the weird sort of comedy fantasy world, and they may not have ever expected that. Do you ever do anything like that?
Oh, good question. So, well, certainly, what one, I think, practice that's served me well. I'm not sure it's quite what you're getting at, but growing up, I was a huge fan of the Zuckers stuff, Airplane, Naked Gun, and of course, they famously just imported these very serious actors that were well known for decades in very serious roles. And of course, the basic shtick was just do what you always did. And it was hilarious because they were just acting the way they would in a dramatic role, but in this comedic setting. And so as a principal, I found it very helpful and satisfying to just bring people in and sort of do the same thing, let them do what they do naturally, rather than, trying to sort of make the comedy. This film, in fact, is a bit of a departure in that it's even more silly than a lot of the other stuff that we've done, but often we'll do stuff that's where the actors will play it, and Liam can speak to this, but quite straight, and trying to make the comedy out of the situation, rather than trying to be deliberately comedic in the performance, if you will.
Yeah, I completely get that. I mean, Dave Letterman, who I worked for a long time, had a great radar for a comedy performance that rang false if somebody was trying too hard to be wacky, and
Right.
he would can we just get the humor out of a real understated or deadpan but completely committed and artful performance where the larger situation is the comedy, not somebody like running around like Jerry Lewis making funny faces or whatever. So it sounds like what you're getting at. And Liam, you I think were an example of this sort of reasonable seeming person in an increasingly crazy circumstance, just trying to hold the line between absurdity and realism. Is that an area that you particularly gravitate toward?
Yeah, it's funny because I've had to learn over time in working with Mark, for example, in a lot of comedies, they're general situations, and you bring some sort of improvisation to bear, and you try different things, you throw different things and different takes out at the wall, see what hits. A lot of times it doesn't, but you might get that sort of magic little comedic moment that accidentally happens. In Mark's stuff, Mark's writing is so specific and it's so well done that from an acting perspective, I've slowly but surely learned that less is more. And so I don't have to bring that much to it necessarily. The writing is there, the roots of it are there, and it's almost more of, yeah, exactly, like a more serious, dramatic, non over the top comedic approach is best. It serves the script, the quality of the script best, because that's where the comedy is, in that specificity. So in that sense, yeah, I mean, it's very much, as Mark says, sort of rooted in sort of dramatic tones and letting the writing do the work.
Well, as an area of comedy, I appreciate there are talented people who are over the top and loud and running around and antic, and that can be fine, but so much should not be that. And if you have the wisdom to contain that, and for myself and a lot of people, you'll see that there's a lot of spots where that's exactly what you want. We got a few minutes left. We're going to just go around a little bit more, but Brian, you had so many moving parts in this thing. By far the largest cast of anything we're talking about today. Cold storage, 2 people. Duel, 3 people. I don't know. You ended up with dozens of people on the screen. Wildly elaborate costumes and props and prostheses, even at some points, I would say. So many things to keep track of and manage. Is there anything that confounded you in the course of making this film? You had to struggle with any particular challenges that you recall? Because it must have been a quite complex undertaking.
I mean, it was a big undertaking. It's the biggest by far of all of my films. My approach to writing is to just aim for the moon and, don't try and produce it at the same time. And then I can pull back later. And this time I never pulled back. I wrote for the moon and then tried to, accomplish it, by closing a street and having, 30 dancers in the street. I will say that finale sequence was rough because we ran out of sun. And I cut the first, the first edit with all the footage we have, and it wasn't enough. It was very unsatisfying. So we went back and reshot a bunch of stuff for the end sequence, which I think makes it feel fuller because it ends big. It tries to end big and, big sort of joyful celebration. And it was rough. But I think we pulled it off. The prosthetic, it took some time. I mean, it worked. I had a professional do it. She was amazing, but it's still, anything like that, any kind of gag like that takes time to pull it off. It's just the time on the set to make sure it's working. And there were a lot of moving parts for that. I think more than, it shows, but.
Well, shoot for the moon in the writing, and then sometimes budget and practicality wise, you have to scale back. But it looks like, as you're saying, you decided to just keep at the moon, and that quite an accomplishment. So congratulations. I was excited to see that, and glad you got back for the reshoot, because if you're that close, you just can't bear to have it be a B plus. You at that point you got to do it as an A, or that's the only way to go. Thomas, I'm guessing you really were out on some Arctic ice. Was that challenging? Were there things that came up in the production of this that you went, oh my God, we didn't think of this, or we didn't understand that?
Well, yes, in fact, there were such things, and we were out on the ice. It's not quite as Arctic as it looks. It's actually a location just outside the center of Helsinki. So it's, but we managed to find this sort of section of beach with a little, like a beach house where we could set up our gear and stuff. So, but it looked quite exotic. But it's not actually that far away from the capital. However, I think probably the major problem that we did have on the shoot was, like, we had about, I think, full 5 days budgeted time-wise for the outdoor shoot. So I think we arrived on Monday and started setting up the tent and whatever. And like around about the 3rd day or so, we just got hit by this some kind of, I don't know what happened, climate change or whatever, but this sort of winter heat wave. And basically the ice just started melting from under our feet, and we're like, oh shit, we got to get out of here. And so we ended up like cutting the shoot short by about 2 days, and we actually had to do some pickup shots later on in the northern part of the country. But the great thing is that we got this incredible contrast in the film. Like, if you look at the opening shots, it's this really very white Arctic untouched snow, and then towards the later part, like of the film, it's like really wet and just full of these puddles and kind of melting, and that's literally from one day to the next. That's overnight that happened. So the bonus was that we got a lot of kind of visual contrast in the landscape that was kind of accidental. I mean, I could say that we planned it, but we didn't. We just sort of had to deal with the elements and made the best of it. But yeah, there were some surprises for sure.
Yeah, well, that is another theme I've noticed both in things I've gotten to be part of and elsewhere, is the world of happy accidents and the smart, ambitious ability to improvise and take a left turn when you have to. So congratulations on managing the ice crisis. I had not thought of that, but now thinking back, I think I remember the difference in the visuals that you're talking about. Now with Duel, you were saying you shot this in one day. So, and this is not your first go round, and you've worked together before, and you probably have, if you're traveling this territory of colonial America, you probably know where to get your costumes and props and all that. So in theory, look, everything's figured out, but in real life, probably that never happens perfectly the way you want. Were there surprises and challenges in your big day of shooting that you hadn't anticipated?
Yeah, great question. And just to echo what Thomas was saying, we had likewise kind of a happy accident in the sense that as relatively small and relatively uncomplicated as this production was, it was actually quite challenging to put together between costumes and props. And, you know, we didn't have the cast locked in for a while. And so these costumes, of course, are highly tailored. And so we had to send measurements to the costumer and, you know, changing out a couple of actors and finally finding costumes that worked with each other. But maybe the best, I think, happy accident was we'd originally planned to shoot in the summer, and we just couldn't get the schedule together to get everyone in one place. Well, as it turns out, in this location where we shot, you know, in the summer, the grass was 2 or 3 feet high, and so it would have been really problematic. By the time we found a date that worked for everyone, it was the first week in November. And not only was the grass much more manageable, but we got this really beautiful foliage that had just started to come in. And so visually, it really made the look of the film. And so if we hadn't been frustratingly delayed for months, I think we never would have achieved that. So that was very much a happy accident for which I'm grateful, and it was absolutely worth the wait.
Liam, do you have the freedom to improvise at all in the moment, or is Mark a complete every syllable is written?
I tried and I got yelled at, and then I had a timeout for 5 minutes. So no, I'm just kidding. It's you know, kind of as I was saying before, I've learned to trust. I mean, you as an actor, when you're looking at a script and you're reading through, you can tell right away when, especially with comedy, it's so hard to nail those comedic beats and those moments. And if it's all there, which it is with Mark's stuff, it leaps off the page. It's just, you don't have to bring that much to it. You just execute the plan, basically. So, and that was a particularly fun challenge to do in this sort of random field out in Concord. And, you know, it was one of our sort of first attempts being on location. A lot of times we'll do some different things just in different indoor locations, but to be outside and to deal with the elements like that was a particular fun challenge. But you know, at the end of the day, it's just trusting the words, trusting the language, keeping those beats efficient, especially given Mark's style, which is very quick and very fun, and trying to get out of your own way. So.
Well, congratulations. It all came together famously, and we are approaching the top of the hour. So I'm going to head for the finish line here. I want to thank you gentlemen for coming together to be part of this. Hopefully you've heard some interesting stuff about other films that you'll now want to go check out. Again, my congratulations to you for doing something at a high level that got you into Woods Hole and presumably many other festivals. It's great fun to see these short glimpses of a powerful vision. I want to thank the Woods Hole people, Judy, John, Hannah, for inviting me to be part of this and for getting you all together for a very interesting conversation. The festival is running now. woodsholefilmfestival.org. Go in there, snap up the tickets to these things. Don't miss out. I will be back on Wednesday morning with another one of these chats, but it was great to meet you all, and in one case, meet you again. So a little bit of ongoing film festival magic. Thanks. Best of luck in the future. Maybe in a greater world like next summer, if it happens to work out, we'll all be together for real in Woods Hole, seeing what else you've come up with in the intervening time. I hope so. Thanks and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.
Thank you.